Hello, good day, and welcome to Wild Woman Podcast, back for another episode. And today I have the, say, wild and wonderful Hilary Keeping comes to mind. A beautiful lady living in England that I became acquainted and got to know in the last few months. And I think I'm just thinking back now, I think it originally was on Substack. And Hilary is a beautiful Substack as well. So I'm going to put all her links at the end of the podcast. But it was through me posting my podcast there, and we sort of started up a conversation. And I just thought I have to have her on as a guest. As I said to Hilary before recording, I said the word that just came to mind when I've had some experience of her work, which I'll mention, but also in just reading a bit about her, is the word witch in its most powerful, beautiful, highest expression. And I let Hilary talk about how she feels about that word as well. But it just straight away came to me. I sort of nearly, tune into the energy of the person before we start talking. And I just thought, wow, she's really reframing or reclaiming this word in the work that she is doing. And what I think is so beautiful is it's just reminding us, and as you hear Hilary's story, I hope you are reminded too that these gifts are innate and intrinsic to all of us. And they've sort of been dormant, I think, for many of us, well, for me, anyways, for many years. And it often takes a big rattling or a breakdown or something in our lives to sort of shake us awake. And as difficult as it can be at the time, it truly, truly is. I always say this, for our highest good. I know, having been there many times, and truly is. It's like we're just shaking off everything that we're not and that has been keeping us limited and small. And Hilary is such an example of this. So, Hilary, such a big welcome to the podcast. Really delighted to have you here.
Thank you so much, Celine. Yeah, I've been a big fan of your podcast for a while. I love watching your interviews, and I often watch them twice because there's so much in them and so much wisdom coming from the women that I've just really enjoyed it. And I feel very honoured that you asked me to come on. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, the check is in the post afterwards for for those kind words. But I think it's just my experience in doing this is just seeing that every woman and man, but I'm interviewing women at the moment, are amazing because we've the same essence at our core. Like we've the same sort of, don't we? The same, well, to ask your opinion, obviously, but the same life force and divinity, as I call it, within us. And I just want to start by asking you, because you said, I loved it at the beginning of your bio that you sent me. I believed in magic as a child, and I still do. So tell me, yeah, when you say you believed in magic and still do, what's that been?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I was growing up, I was really in my own imaginal world. I used to read books all the time, Enid Blyton and all the books with fairies and elementals. So I really believed they were real, and they were real inside my little world. So, but then obviously when you grow up, you learn that you have to go out, get a job, reality hits. Um, but yeah, I think now having sort of reconnected more with nature and the different sort of studies that I've done with learning to do house healing and learning to work with essential oils and herbs, and just sort of all my life trying to reconnect back to nature, which I kind of lost at some point. But now just being more authentic me and feeling that magic come back into my life, if you know what I mean.
Yes, I do, but you can see it in your face. And I think when we find it, it just sort of oozes out of us because it is our essence. It's like that creative force, I think, which I never really truly as well knew is intrinsic to us. Like it's not outside of us that you go and find. It's actually who we are, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's sort of uncovering that. That was a journey for me. How did this all? So you believed in magic as a child and you saw and believed in fairies. Did you see them? Did you have experiences as a child that you would say were otherworldly?
I didn't see them with my eyes, if you see what I mean, but I saw
Mm.
them in my imagination, and I
Mm.
didn't realize how powerful that was until more recent years, really, because I was taught that your imagination is made up, and it's just your imagination is just you dreaming things up that aren't real. And so whenever I used to ask the adults, are fairies real? They would always say, well, no, they're not real, but um, inside my head they were. So it never really made sense to me, although I didn't see them with my eyes. But since um,
Your inner eyes, I
my
suppose that's
inner
the
eyes, yeah,
thing.
my third eye, I guess. So
Yeah.
since doing more studies as an adult on that sort of thing, and also since connecting more with my intuition and psychic abilities, I realized that yes, there's a part of your imagination that can make things up, but once you learn to tune in, your imagination is actually your connection to all that is. And so, what you can see in your imagination and in your dreams can be as real, if not more real, than what is here in reality. So that was quite an eye opener for me.
Yeah, I love when you say dream things up because isn't that what we are here to do? Isn't that what we're when we're not, I can't say I have mastered this, but it's a lifelong journey for me. But it's sort of as we cast off all these limits and beliefs and conditioning and that, dreaming up. I just love what you say there. That is what we're here to do. We you know, that's what it feels to me. This is the if you call it reality, the world we're seeing is what we have dreamed up, even if it's unconscious. Or how do
Yeah, I
you?
think you do dream your reality before it becomes real, I think. And I think I experienced that most strongly when, well, some people call it a midlife crisis, but in my 40s, I decided I wanted to leave the corporate world behind and become a dog groomer. And it was such a massive change. But I literally, in my mind, I saw myself as a dog groomer. And apart from all the training I had to do to physically learn how to groom dogs, I had to see myself as a dog groomer, and I started to dress as a dog groomer and think, what car would a dog groomer drive? And
Wow.
I wasn't doing it consciously, but I think subconsciously I was trying to almost step into those shoes of being a dog groomer. And it really helped and sort of turbocharged that change for me. It just, yeah, something really shifted to get me out of the corporate world and into something more aligned with who I truly am.
Yeah, that's amazing. Can you talk about that? Because I've had that experience, and I think many have, and I think many maybe are going through that now because I think we're both studying astrology as well, but there are many signs that we are, if we are open to it, that, the world is shifting. And this idea of living a life that isn't authentic, that isn't honoring what's like calling you, your inner voice, let's say, is not really going to be supported. That's my sense. It's going to be more and more difficult to sustain a life that isn't true to you. And I found that 10 years ago through cancer. So what happened to you? You said you were in a corporate job. What what was the corporate job you were in?
Well,
Or
I never really knew what I wanted to do because at school I was mostly good at English and languages, and I really wanted to be a writer. And it's like, well, you can't really make a living out of that. So I ended up sort of falling into, well, that's what they told me anyway. I ended up falling into law and thinking, well, I was quite academic, so I studied law and became a legal executive and worked for 25 years in corporate law, working with Companies House and setting up businesses and things like that. Um, and
did
to
you
be honest,
enjoy it?
I would say at the time in my 20s and 30s, it was, I was very goal driven, and it was kind of like to achieve what I thought my potential should be, which is to be successful. And it wasn't fulfilling me. But it was, making money, and I felt that I was making a successful career. But there was something missing. And I think it was one word you mentioned, creativity. There was no way, there was no creativity. So I was sort of looking for things outside of work to fulfill that, but there wasn't a lot of time outside of work. So
Mm.
eventually I ended up getting ill and burnt out, and um, just really getting run down, um, glandular fever,
Okay.
Epstein-Barr virus,
Oh,
all that
wow.
sort of
Okay.
thing. And I was like wading through treacle because my body was just so low. Um, and in the end, I just sort of had to take a slightly lesser stressful job because, so I went from being a legal executive to being a secretary within the same firm, which people found that a bit odd. But for me, it was just, I have to do it for my health. I just need to take a step back.
Mm.
And that was when I had a little bit of space and my mind just went, what would you do if you could do anything in the world? And I just kept seeing dogs everywhere, and I just wanted to be close to dogs. And it just made me think, I can groom dogs. So that was the whole shift for me.
Wow. And had you always felt a sort of drawn to dogs, or had that been there as well in your childhood? Or
I
was this
was
quite something new?
always drawn to animals, but actually, as a child, I was a
Mm.
little bit scared of dogs. So I've always been quite sensitive, and I was a bit scared. But I was really drawn to horses, and I was riding horses from 7 years old.
Ah.
So yeah, I've always been really close to animals, but this whole dog thing came out of the blue, and I think in a way they sort of saved me because they just came to find me when I needed them.
Wow. And yeah, don't they say, well, they're I suppose I believe that they're all our teacher in a way. Like, what did you feel the dogs were teaching you, like, and now you're working with them as well, but
They taught me so much because I used, well, I do still suffer from panic attacks sometimes, but nowhere near when I was in my 20s, 30s. I used to suffer a lot of panic attacks. And when I started working with dogs and learning how to groom them in my way, which is very holistically and not forcing them, and just very sort of allowing them the freedom to move around, and sort of more sort of within their comfortable zone. So I don't tend to strap them up and just do them really fast. I tend to only do like 3 dogs a day and just take my time with them. So what I realized was that the way I was treating myself was not as compassionately as I was treating the dogs. So I realized that I need to be a lot kinder to myself. So if I don't force a dog to do something that he wouldn't want to do, why am I forcing myself to drive on motorways, which always used to give me a panic attack? So I would then take the back roads and take longer and just be a bit easy on myself. And I think that, working with the dogs helped me to be kinder to myself, really.
that's so lovely. It's like, yeah, seeing I suppose their sensitivities as well, maybe, and how easily they can be, I suppose, upset or whatever way that it sort of sounds like it just was resembling how you were feeling if you were very sensitive. They were nearly mirroring that back to you, I suppose, is
Yeah, exactly. They are
yeah.
mirrors. They do tend to
Mm.
be mirrors. Our pets, our cats and our dogs.
Mm.
Yeah, I've often found that working with clients with the botanicals as well, that you sometimes find that where the pet parent has a certain issue, that's being mirrored to them by the dog, almost like the dog is sort of desperately trying to show them what's happening within their body. So they are quite amazing.
And how would you deal with that? So, say if you notice an owner come with their dog and you get a very strong sense that the dog you're saying is sort of mirroring something that's maybe going on in the owner, how would you address that with the owner? Like,
So what I tend to do is during the session, it's not so much, it is focused on the dog, but it's more like a healing space between all of us. So me, the pet parent, the dog, um, the house, the spirits that are there. It's just we're all together in that energy. And what tends to happen is, well, the plant as well, obviously, because you've got the essential oil, the herb, or the hydrosol. And once you open the bottle, say, of the essential oil, the molecules go into the air and they join in that space. And so you're kind of in a conversation with the plant and between all of you. And it can't help, it's like the healing can't help but go to where it's needed. So if it happens to be the owner that needs the healing, then generally speaking, that's where the healing goes. So yeah,
Okay, so it's very it's not necessarily said, as you said, because overtly
no,
this issue is going on. Yeah, that's so beautiful because I know both of us, I know you've been using other oils and then more recently doTerra oils, and they have changed my life since. And I even find it still hard to articulate, but it's like what you said, they seem to go to where is needed, and it's to trust that. I think that with all of nature, we don't, I think sometimes I can as well be still stuck on this does this job, this does this job, but I think it's different for each of us, you know what I work with, and if you work with it, maybe doing something, would you find that
yeah,
um
absolutely.
to be
Because
the
I
case?
think when you say this oil does this,
Mm.
in a way you're labeling it.
Mm.
So it's to try and like disconnect from the labels a little bit because the dogs don't read the labels. So they, you know, sometimes when you look at the properties of an essential oil or a plant, I mean they're this long because they offer so many healing properties. So the dog will take what it needs from that plant and it won't necessarily be what you expect it to. So I try and keep an open mind and just go a little bit with my intuition, but also a little bit I'll check the books and make sure I'm bringing the right oils that would be suitable, but keeping an open mind because the dog may choose something completely different because they know what they need and they don't need to look at the label on the bottle.
I think that's so good. No one that's a very gosh, that's it, really good teachers. I can get a little bit addicted to that too. Well, sometimes when you're learning as well, it is nice to sort of have an understanding, particularly with certain issues. This is often the most used. But what I'm learning from studying a lot of it is all the chemistry of nearly all oils or plants. It's like their immune system. So that's how I saw it described. And then they all have unique properties on top of that, whatever it happens to be, whether it's to do with the immune or the nervous system. But overall, as you said, when you take them, they'll they'll just go, as you said, where they're needed. So if you're working with the client and the dog, so do you have then an array? You obviously have sort of your little apothecary or whatever there, and then you just intuitively choose, is it? Or as you said, also bringing in what you would know the plant for, or you said the hydrosol as well. Is that a
Yes, yeah.
spray
So
then? Yeah.
yeah, it's slightly less potent, a
Okay.
different process. So it's more like a water, so that they can actually drink that as well and take it in that way. So the essential oils are more potent, so they tend to work with those by inhalation. But I see the plant as and the oil as almost like a personality. So it's like almost like a sentient being. So it's sort of bringing its personality into the session. But I do tend to tune into the dog the day before or the morning before the session. So in a sort of animal communication session, so I'll take a photo, I'll have a photograph and I will sit with that and I'll just get what sort of images come to me or, pictures come into my mind or words. And sometimes names of plants or oils will come into my mind. So I'll make a note of those and I won't know why that's come up necessarily, but I'll just make a note of that. And then I'll also go to the books and I'll look at the questionnaire that the owners filled in about what issues that they think needs addressing with the dog. And then I'll sort of do like half and half. Some of them are actually chosen for their properties and some are just those own intuitive ones because there's so many, like there's so many that I can't literally take my entire apothecary. So it's just a way of like narrowing
No.
it down and sometimes a follow-up appointment to, if more things come. And also there's layers to healing. So sometimes they will work with a particular oil for a few days or a week or a month even, and then they'll stop because they will have taken enough of that. And then maybe another layer of healing will come up. So then you'll look to offer them different oils.
Ah, gosh, sorry, it's so fascinating. We've sort of gone down deep into the oils, but we'll come back out in a minute into sort of the bigger. But it's just while we're here, it's so fascinating that when you say going down through the layers, so say for the animal, it's both the animal and the client, like do you give them sort of certain protocols or ways to use them when they leave? Or like how with an animal would you support them?
They say it was a rescue dog and it may have a lot of trauma from whatever things have happened, but it may have something quite pressing, like it may have some gut issues which are causing pain, or it may have some wounds that are healing, or something really sort of like that needs instant addressing. And it would sort of say you offered barley grass powder, which is a lovely sort of earthy green herb, and that may really support their gut and overall immune system. And they may just really go for that in the first session, and not much else. So what I would say is for the next few days, offering that daily until they've kind of healed those issues with their gut and their immune system, and then have another session. And they may go for like an oil like yarrow or something, which helps with pain and grief and things like that, or neroli, which can help with um, uplifting if there's been trauma. So the trauma layers may not come to the surface until much later, because they
Mm.
need their body to be able to hold themselves before they can actually delve down into those sort of areas. So
Mm.
those are the ways it can work.
But that's so beautiful, Hilary, how just to hear the way you're speaking, I don't think we hear it enough. That to me is so supportive rather than, we'll give you something that'll reduce those symptoms and I know there's a place for all sorts of medicine and it's a personal choice, but I still feel the more, I'll just say personally for me and my experience, the more you sort of honor that intelligence of the body and nature, because we are all nature. Exactly. It's so beautiful how you describe the layers. So there's a lovely organic process happening that the body knows itself what it needs to do, and we're not overriding it by saying, I'm going to give you this now so that you can get back to work tomorrow or whatever it happens to be. You need to go through and just the power that we hold within. I mean, you must be seeing, are you, since you've started this work, like the magic as you described at the beginning.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And there is science behind it as well, because they've
Mhm.
done studies with there was a famous study done in the jungle with some orangutans, and how they literally go into the forest and choose this particular plant. There was a one that had a nasty wound and would take this plant, chew it into a pulp, and then press that into the wound. And then I think it says within 8 days, um, the wound cleared over, and then it was gone within a month. So this has actually been studied. It's just so innate in, I think, all animals and in ourselves, as you just said, that we've
Mm.
forgotten that we have that ability. And
Yeah.
as you say, that it's for everyone to choose what type of medicine, but there is a knowing in us of how to heal ourselves, which is really beautiful.
Yeah. And I think that's what you even just will come back out of that world specifically for the moment, because I just want to ask you, as you moved then from this corporate world, and I love the fact that I'll have to start doing that. I don't know what I'll dress as next. Maybe I'll go around as a witch. I'll find myself a hat and a, and what's the broomstick. But as you were moving then, so from this corporate world, and I find it interesting that you said, so this I think would be useful to touch on for listeners as well for a moment is when you said you sort of downgraded, well, that's how it would have been perceived. You gave yourself more space and went down to being a secretary in your work so that you could sort of recover, and the reaction you got, like how did, because I must say I found that quite challenging when I didn't go back into, I wasn't able, instinctively I knew I'll die. And yet, if you said that to many people, they'd think, what is she talking about? But I knew in my, this is coming back to this authenticity, isn't it? So, how did you deal with that, or how did that, how was that for you at the time?
I think it was just so right for me because there was people that were really worried about me as if I would be embarrassed or ashamed of doing it, which is there's no one more
No.
important in a law firm than a secretary anyway, but it just people saw it as me, as you say, downgrading, and it just felt so right and I was so much happier. And for a little while, it was enough for me just to have that breathing space and to just carry on my job doing that. And it was lovely because the people there are lovely and I was with the same people. I didn't have to leave. It was a perfect
Mm.
solution for me and it was wonderful. But it gave me that space and it was, you know, I secretly started to train as a dog groomer without telling anyone else and doing it on my days off. And then I was secretly learning, training Reiki and, just astrology. And it was just filling my life with things that I just loved. So it was so perfect for me. And eventually I had to come out and tell everyone that I was doing all this stuff.
Come out of the witch closet.
Exactly. Yeah.
We need more of us doing that. But isn't the word that really strikes me there is when you said space. I had space. And I think this is what, is so important. Nothing new, like nothing new could come into my life. It was packed chock a block, like every moment and every second. So I wouldn't have to stop and feel how unhappy I was. Um, so that again seems a very important thing. Nobody's saying run off and give up your job. Do if you want, but if that feels right. But the way you did it is you created some space first. So I think that's maybe something important for people to know, isn't it? Find.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm,
I think if you can find that space, it just stops you feeling trapped and it just allows you to see other avenues. And I remember, I think it was in 2020, I had an astrology reading with Andrew Smith of the
mm,
Blue Rose, who's an amazing astrologer.
yeah.
And I said to him, what I really want to do is I want to do animal communication and Reiki and all sorts of, energy work and house healing and things like this. And he said, well, obviously, he said, it's in your chart, it's here. And I was like, really? And he said
Mm,
he couldn't imagine how I'd ever worked in corporate. So I think it's a shame that people don't look at their astrology charts earlier in their
oh,
lives because
yeah.
it was written
In the
there that
stars,
that was
literally.
sort of more authentic to me.
And
So
how did
that
you?
gave me a bit
Sorry.
more,
Mhm.
it sort of gave me a bit more confidence to go forward with that because it felt authentic.
Yeah, I think that's another beautiful and another I adore astrology as well, and I actually went for, it's very interesting, all the synchronicities I find with people when we're on a similar path. You start crossing over in a lot of things, and I went to Andrew Smith's years ago as well in Ireland for a reading back in maybe 2005 2006. I was going through yeah, I was going through a difficult time at the time. It took me a while to get out of it. But where, if you don't mind just demonstrating, where was that showing up in your astrology chart when you say, was it in your sort of public life? How was it yeah, being shown?
Yeah, I think at that time, I think it was to do with my connection to nature, and
Mm,
because I've got a square between the sun and Ceres, which means that I need to be close to nature and um, to be able to shine my light, if you know what I mean. So by sort of just literally working in an office and staring at a screen all day, I was so unhappy. So I needed that space. And also I think because I've got quite a lot of Gemini in my chart, and that is the way he explained it at the time was very different to how I understood Gemini, as from your sun sign reading that you read in the paper. So it was just like, it's almost like a bridge between the spirit and earth. So it's like one, the twins, Castor and Pollux, and sort of one is on heaven and one is on earth. And it's kind of like you're a bridge between. I'm
But that's
probably getting that
beautiful.
wrong because
No, no, but
I'm,
it's beautiful. I haven't heard that either. I mean,
yeah,
that's why
it just,
astrology is a never-ending study,
yeah.
really.
So that was really, really lovely. But yeah, there's yeah, I think he called me a space cadet, which I which I said that's just the best thing anyone's ever called me because it just felt, I spent all my life trying to fit into a corporate job, like a square peg in a round hole or whatever you say. And it made me realize why I didn't fit into that. Because yeah,
Yeah, beautiful. I know. No, it's just it's just lovely to see all the varying tools that, like astrology. Again, I know we're both passionate about, but I just to say it again for listeners, it's very different to reading your horoscope. And anyone, if you've listened to my interview with Melanie Reinhardt, the most amazing Melanie Reinhardt, you will get a whole new sort of understanding of really what's available to us and how unique to me what it has shown me. I think, I don't know with you, Hilary, is just this sort of unique signature that each of us have come here to sort of draw and leave on the earth. Like it is so unique, it cannot be just boxed off in, it's all sort of in this homogenous way of living. It isn't the answer, isn't it not? And I think it just empowers you to know that I can be
yeah,
weird and wonderful and as a space cadet if I wish. If
exactly,
that's what I'm
yeah,
here to be, that's what I'll do.
yeah,
Own it.
yeah, exactly. And it's all around you and inside you, and it just makes you understand the world so much better when you can understand what transits are happening, and it just puts everything into perspective for me. It just really helps me.
We're part of the great big cosmic intelligence, really, isn't it? Like we are a part of it. We're a cog in the wheel or a piece in the jigsaw. And then when you understand it, I think it takes away that powerlessness. It can help.
Yes.
Going, I'll be faced with this energy. I may not know the specifics, but this is what's whirling around. Anyways, we'll leave astrology for the moment. You could go off down a rabbit hole with each of these topics. But as you gave yourself space and you came out of the corporate world and eventually, so you obviously were ready to, you know, set up your dog grooming, or you felt that, that you could make a living there. When did a lot of these psychic abilities and intuitive abilities you talk about, how did they start to awaken in you?
I think first of all was when I went to a course on Dartmoor, um, at the lovely Embercombe, which is like a 50 acres of rewilded land on Dartmoor. And I saw, there's a picture here which is created by a local artist to me. I saw that art and it just drew me in because it's just so beautiful. It's by Tangled Muses, an artist called Lucy Tipper, who's on Instagram. And it was actually an advert for this course, which is a year-long contemporary animism run by the Animate Earth Collective. And I signed up for it, and it just changed my life really because it was what I needed, as in taking me back to nature. I think there was about 12 of us there from all over the world, and we were
Wow.
held in a beautiful space with teachers, Angharad Wynne, who's a storyteller from Wales, and Colin Campbell, who's um, sort of like a shaman from South Africa. He was brought up with the indigenous tribes there, and he was learned all of the ways of the witch doctor sort of thing. And it was just fascinating. And so I think that kind of being with those people, and I found my place. I just felt like I belonged among everyone was just like me, just normal people, but just people that just really wanted to connect to nature and find a new way with the old ways, if you want, go back to the old ways, but in a contemporary fashion, like bring it up to now, you know.
Yes, yes. And what does, when you say bringing up to now in new ways, what does that look like for you? You know?
So, for example, we were sort of sent out onto this beautiful land on Dartmoor and told to sort of find a spot, you know, that would be our sit spot for the time that we're there for the week, you know. So I found a lovely place there with an elm tree and just sort of you just go and sit there every day and sort of get to know that land in all different times of the day. And we actually did an all night visual, like each one of us go separately out onto the land. And it was the only time I've ever sat out at night on my own. Although I wasn't alone because I knew there were people within that 50 acres, but I felt like I was alone and it was quite scary. But there's something about that disconnection that we've got from the land and just being there all night. It just it was life changing for me. And you know, I actually saw fairies for the first time with my actual eyes.
Wow.
So
I want to see a fairy.
when I got home, my partner said, "Don't ever tell anyone that, will you?"
I
But
think
I
more and
think
more
it was
people, I'm meeting more people who see fairies.
I think we would it was described as when you go there and you sit all night and you give something up of yourself. So you give up your night's sleep and you give yourself to the land in a way and you just be. You're not trying to do anything. You've got no phones, you've got no, you know, no food, you're just there. And I think my gift back from the land was, you know, I don't think I was asleep. I may have dropped off, but I could see these floating bubbles with lights and little fairies inside with the trees. And I just, you know, and I saw badgers and deer. These were all real, just like while I'm sitting there. And it was just so magical. And it just, yeah, opened up a whole new world for me of so when I say bringing that up to now, I'm not saying I sit out all night, but what I do is I do take time every day to sit outside and connect with the land. You know, look at the stars, look at the sun, just be with a tree. You know, just it's a daily practice. It just feels like it connects to you.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I know I've found that recently I've been more called to just, I suppose, consciously. I would have been pounding the pavement, going walking and in nice places, but less consciously. I'm here, just sit and appreciate nature, rather than. But it sounds so lovely what you're saying that when you're there, not looking for anything, and you're giving something of yourself, like you sat upon, that it's sort of that reciprocal sort of energy that maybe there's a trust or something, is there, that has to be built up, do you think?
Yeah.
Or,
And we were taught about how to enchant the land because as humans we're able to sing and dance and things that we don't do, you know, we're self-conscious, we don't do that. And you know, or like drumming like you do, just being on the land and singing to it is a beautiful thing to do because the land and the birds is always singing to us, you know, but we don't tend to give a lot back. And I think you won't necessarily see the fairies or see the magic unless you give something of yourself. And so we were
mm,
taught that, you know, take an offering, be it a song or a poem or a dance or even, you know, some oats or a little offering of something to give to the land. Because all we tend to do is take in the modern day. So it's trying to get back to a more reciprocal way of living.
that's a really beautiful message to hear, just to be reminded of, that it's reciprocal. We expect so much, don't we? Like, and demand of nature, or we give out, or it's raining, or we just, I have to say myself, like, even that is such a beautiful, just it brings me back to when you said, as a child and living in that world, and it was and is real, but I suppose just, then the world you grew up in tells you it isn't, and then you've reconnected with I think as a, I really believe this, and definitely from myself and the more women I've spoken to, that our childhood really holds the key to so much of our authenticity and our gifts and really what we're here because we're naturally, ideally, we're in a sort of more innocent sort of state where we just are instinctive and spontaneous before it's sort of taken out of us nearly. So the
Yeah,
clues are
I
nearly
think
always there, aren't they?
if you can reconnect to your child, your inner child, it is wonderful, and find that creativity and playfulness. If you can somehow find reconnect to that, it does bring more magic into your world.
Yeah. And what do you do then? So as well as doing that in the land, what other things do you do to be playful to sort of bring out and be creative? Because I know, and I was very interested as well, you were talking about the oils and creativity. So what do you do? Because I know you're a beautiful writer. I saw a post. I imagine you're going to get the sense that you're writing more maybe or publishing more on Substack, will you?
Yeah.
It's just really beautiful bringing all of these aspects of you. Um, excuse me, into your writing. So how has that sort of opened up for you? Or what has helped?
Yeah, I think it was definitely sitting with the oils because I wanted to get to know the oils more for my work with the dogs. So I would sit with the oils, and my teacher, Rachel Knott from My Animal Matters, she taught me to sort of do a body scan. So scan through my body first to feel where the tensions are, and just sort of like if you've got like an achy knee, to sort of just say to your knee in your head or out loud, like, I'm listening. You're not trying to change it, but you acknowledge it. 9 times out of 10, it kind of dissipates. So things like that before then opening the oil, and then what comes through from the oil isn't necessarily the niggly knee. Do you know what I mean? So you can actually connect with it as a more clear in a more clear way. So if you sort of scan through and acknowledge what you've got going on in your body and then connect with the oils, what I find is I can sort of go into a meditative state, and then I'll have images and words and sometimes songs. And I tend to sort of go down a rabbit hole with this oil and just literally write all the words I'm getting, write down the songs, listen to the songs. And it just builds up a whole, like almost like a relationship with this oil. And then what I tend to do is kind of like, maybe I feel like writing a poem. So put all those words into a poem, and it just feels nice to get it all out. I guess it's what creativity does. It's kind of helps you kind of creating is just in itself, I think, what we're here to do, really. So um occasionally I get out my paints and I paint something, but I've still got that old thing. I'm not good at painting, but it doesn't matter. You just got to do it because it feels good. So I sometimes do that as well. But music comes in a lot with the oils for me. I don't know why, but they just come into my head, and then I listen to them. And so, like with Jasmine, it was bringing up a lot of quite uplifting. And then when you listen to the lyrics, sometimes it means something to me as to how I may use the oils with a dog, for example. So it's really interesting, and I'd love to sort of work with other people doing that as well, because I think it would be interesting to sort of see how what other people can come up with as well.
Yeah, that sounds so exciting. I've sort of been feeling it in a different way, in that it's like the oils. There's one that started calling to me. Well, that's what I'll say because I just felt it. I was going to get some oils and I just kept hearing geranium, geranium, geranium. And when I smelt it, I thought I was nearly going to pass out. It was just so beautiful. But I know it's very sort of heart and emotionally balancing. Now, there's probably many qualities to it, but I feel like it is a story to tell me, and it's nearly like you're saying it's much deeper than what I know it to be, and I'll need to spend more time. And that's, I feel, a very strong, it's coming up for me and not as lot as well around the oils. Like I want to go into deeper work with them and plants, that there's a whole communication like you're talking about. There's, isn't there, that just is there. So
Yeah,
it's a very unique journey for everyone. I suppose you'll use them as you feel called to, and you can go as
yeah,
deep. I suppose they'll work with you at the level you are ready to, like you said, with the animals. They don't push, they don't force. And I love that. Yeah, I'll go off this topic again because we could just stay talking about them. What I really, oh, it's just so beautiful, Hilary. I just think how you've just blended all of this. You've really opened yourself up to so much possibility. That's what it just feels. You didn't just go, okay, I'm going to do this now. I left law, my corporate job. You've also gone into, and this is just something I have to say to people, my God, I was just blown away by your work with house and land healing and how you communicate with the, because I know people do this work, but I've never really had any interaction, let's say, with someone who has. What drew you to that then? So did this come out of the animism? Everything is living. Isn't that really what animism is? Everything is
Yeah,
alive.
everything's alive,
The beautiful
and
cat
it,
is joining us.
yeah, my cat's dreaming. But also, it's like that connection with the land and realizing that the land has energy and life of its own, and I've always sort of felt things in places, if you know what I mean. I get quite attached to houses, and I get drawn to different pieces of land to sit there, and I didn't really know why. And so I was following someone on YouTube called Tim Walter, who's a house healer. I don't know
Okay.
how I came across him, but when he mentioned that he did a course, I decided to sign up for that because I'd finished the animism course. And that was the next step on opening up my psychic and intuitive world because, you know, when we started doing the course and I started to say, oh, it's just my imagination. And he was very much like, no, you need to learn how to recognize when it's your imagination and when it's your intuition sort of thing. And he taught me how to do that. And also with the exercises that we were doing it on Zoom with other students. We would douse each other's houses for energies. And it became apparent that we all work in different ways, but there was some quite distinct. So we would all plot lines on the same floor plan, for example, and there would be correlations. So they would all cross at a certain point. So we were all picking up on it, but in different ways. And it made me realize that this was real as well. I had this sort of feeling when I went into it that, oh, well, it won't be real, I won't be good at it, or but actually all you've got to do is learn to really tune in, and you can douse and plot the energies on a floor plan. And yeah, just it was just a really great course. He gives you a really good protocol, a process for protecting yourself, learning how to douse, learning how to interact with those energies. And yeah, I guess I've just adapted my own way of doing it, which I tend to find some stories of the land which come out, which are quite nice to help people connect with their land. But yeah,
And
it was a big one for me to learn how to use my intuition like that.
yeah, that seems a big. And when you say the difference between imagination and intuition, I had heard, and this is sort of how I feel that they're almost, I heard it described as almost your imagination is nearly the gateway into your intuition. It's like opening the door because if you don't have any openness to the fact that there is a voice that you can connect with, that there is another source of information other than, the mental realm of the material world, unless you have to open yourself to that really first, don't you? And that's so I just thought it was really nice the way that that was described. And like you describe, you could argue, when you said about dressing as the dog groomer or, becoming that. So you were imagining what it would be like to be a dog groomer and what would a dog groomer look like and do and dress like. But also you were obviously guided and there was something in your intuition that was saying, something in you. You were seeing dogs and you recognized it. So they seem to be quite like, so how would he have talked about that? Because to me they seem quite closely connected.
Yeah,
Or,
I think he actually taught us. It was like a spiritual development class in a way as well, because he taught us sort of like the basics of how energy works and what is consciousness and all this sort of thing. So there it was quite a deep course. But
Mm.
as regards the imagination, it was kind of described in a way of when I would go and do some dowsing and I would see an image in my mind, when it was like a message or a knowing, it would have a sort of almost like a physical, I'd feel a sort of jolt or a sort of surprise, almost like, well, that didn't come from me, where did that come from? And it sort of felt different.
Mm.
And yeah, I think just through practice
Yeah.
and his kind of guidance as to how it comes through, then I just kind of learned to tell the difference, and it becomes sort of second nature once you've felt it, you understand it then.
Yes, yes. It's, I suppose we're learning. It's like building a muscle that maybe hasn't been used. We're designed to use it, but we just didn't know it was there.
And I think if you have quite a vivid imagination already, like I always did, once you open it up, it kind of really it goes has a life of its own sort of thing. So I would encourage people to do it because it's really good fun and it's lovely to have that connection
Yeah.
to
And
sort of allow that
what
come through.
Yeah, and what has been the biggest, from following this path and, really listening? Again, I'm just thinking of people listening to this and going, gosh, I'd love to. I'm so stressed though. I can't see my way out of what I'm doing. And I know we talked about creating space. Just to even hone in on, like, I think from listening to you, anyone will see just, how alive and happy you are. And, just, I think it's the variety as well, which really strikes me is I find that too. Like I'm currently passionate about my podcast, my astrology, the oils. There's other things and I'm like, oh my God, I can't can't contain them all. But that also was part of how we're designed. Well, it feels that way. I don't know if that's something, just certain people, but that when you start to open this up, we are not just one thing. There's so many parts of us, like as you said, through our imagination. Is that like what has been the greatest gift from all of this, beyond the specifics of the work that you do?
I think the greatest gift has been just being able to be me. And I think, when you're trying, it's not even consciously trying to, but it's through being disconnected from myself in a way, trying to do something that wasn't suiting me. Um, can I read you something from that sort of sums it up? So this
Please
is
do.
from The Wild Edge of Sorrow by Francis Weller. And
Mhm.
you know how people always ask, what do you do? Or how do you earn a living? So no one asks, what is the gift you carry in your soul? What have you brought with you into the heart of the village? I mean, isn't that
Beautiful.
beautiful? To me, it's kind of like I had to come to that through many, many years of just earning a living and just trying to fit in. I had to ask myself, what is the gift I carry in my soul? And what am I going to bring to the village? And it just, I don't know how, but I think it was through just being ill and being so um, not
I
in the
think,
right place that I just had to tune in to who I really was and what gifts do I really have. And when I was setting out on, in my early 20s, gifts of being sensitive, having an intuition and an imagination, I didn't know what to do with them. But I wish now that I'd given myself the space to really sit and think, what could I do with this? And maybe I'll just do nothing for a bit until I've worked out what I can do with this rather than run headlong into something that wasn't right for me.
yeah, but what do you think? Because I genuinely believe as well that no experience is wasted. I didn't. I think Wayne Dyer said that, and I remember that helped me. I found him when I got cancer, as you find, he had just died, and I sort of found a lot of his work, and it really helped me. The teacher appears as the student is ready, the right people come in. Um, And I often remember that because at times I'd go, God, what was I doing that working in a bank and then in a university? And there's nothing wrong with those, jobs at all, because there's an amazing variety of jobs in all of these places. And there's the attitude and how you show up. And I understand that. People used to say to me, well, you could go back as a different person, but as a different person, I don't want to go back. But like, what was I going to say? So what would you feel about, yes, that maybe wasn't your natural place and your natural gifts being, or maybe they were in a different way being shared, but at the same time, there was something, you weren't in it for no reason, because I don't believe anything happens by accident. So what was it there? Even just the contrast, but what was it there, do you think, to show you?
Because I mean, if time isn't really linear, then we're doing it all at the same time, really, aren't we? And the time is right when it happens. And I did in another astrology reading with Camilla Laziz, who's also from Blue Rose. She said to me, "It's happening now because it's the right time," you know. So I don't regret it really, although it sounds like I do. But um, as you say, it's for a reason, isn't it? And I guess I had to go through that to get to where I am, like everyone does.
Mm. What
And
are the things you've learned from it? What would you take rather than
yeah,
what have you
yeah.
learned?
I just met so many. I met so many lovely people, and yeah, we did. I had good times, and I did learn, a lot about myself, and I learned that yeah, you can be sensitive in those places and survive.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
some people love it. Some
We
people
set up a
so
lot of
thrive.
companies.
Some people so thrive in it, and I was almost jealous of the people who were just living their best lives doing that. And I applaud them for it, but it just wasn't right for me. I was constantly trying to get something out of it and please everybody, and the only way to do that was to work harder, work longer, and it was just exhausting me.
I think as well, though, I think it's the energy of who you are. Like, as you said, the gift that you bring. And as you walk into the village, I mean, you could see that where you worked as the village, you're still bringing yourself and your essence and your energy. And I think that often can be why we are in places. We may not feel, I think even in this time of awakening, let's say, or people awakening to their authentic self is probably the best way of putting it, and really, listening to that inner voice are needed all over the world in every type of job and place, because no more than we found maybe people, or and still are. I'm always finding some teacher. I'm always needing, support and guidance, but from someone maybe who's, I wouldn't say a step ahead or who has done that already. So it's like everybody needs to be scattered around. There'd be no point, all the people who are living their lives and finding their authentic voice all just in one little spot, you know.
No, no, we need them everywhere.
Yeah. So I sort of feel if I look back as well, I sort of think there was a lot I learned though. Like I sort of think now, well, even doing a podcast, I wouldn't in my wildest dreams, like when I was young, I was so shy and so quiet and so even in my first job, afraid to speak. And I ended up in marketing in a lot of my jobs, and it was so terrifying most of the time. And eventually I found aspects of it I found sort of comfortable. But I now can see, well, if I'd never had to face those fears and, push myself through them, I couldn't be doing what I'm doing now, because I couldn't go from terrified of opening my mouth to doing a podcast. Like it just doesn't. So I'm sure, there's everything has its purpose, even if it's years later, isn't it? When
Yeah,
we,
absolutely.
know.
Yeah,
And you've obviously had to bring, I'm saying this now just as an outsider, but in the work that you did, we're obviously very organized, it's like many things going on at once, like it sounds you
yeah,
have now. So that
yeah,
capacity to hold a lot of things and a lot of, and important,
yeah,
you know.
yeah. And I think obviously, when I'm producing my house healing reports and things, the secretary in me
Yes,
quite enjoys
yes.
setting them out.
Yes, I have to say, I just have to mention this for a few minutes because it just blew my mind. I skipped over it there. Hilary, sorry, I say Rachel. I looked down at, sorry, you something here, a book, Rachel Knott of My Animal Matters. That's why I said Rachel.
That's my
Um,
teacher. Yeah.
yeah. Hilary kindly offered to do, I suppose, a house healing or ancestral healing in the house home I'm living in. And my God, did it shake up me and many things in a really positive way, though, that I didn't even understand. I still even find it hard to but the most beautiful report, this is what I want to say, your skills, the most beautiful, thorough report. And what was everything, I have to say, everything in it just resonated so deeply. And you brought in music, you brought in a song, and I literally cried. It was, yeah, it was Celine Dion, wasn't it? I Will Go On from the Titanic. And I was like reading this, going, how is this affecting me so much? So you're bringing so many. Maybe describe if someone is thinking, why would I get, firstly, some healing done on my house and land? Why would I do it? And what can I expect to gain from doing that?
Yeah, I've had people come to me for different reasons. So, um, if someone's moving house, I've got a lovely client at the moment who wants me to do a healing on their house before they move, so that it's left in like beautiful, energy for
Very
the new
thoughtful.
people coming in. Yeah, and then on their new house when they move, obviously for their new house, they would like me to do a healing on that one, obviously as well. So, but other people, I had a client who'd moved recently into a brand new build. And because they're a very sensitive and nature loving person, they were a little bit uncomfortable about the amount of trees that had to be felled to be able to build that development there. And they just said, I feel like this land needs some healing, and so I did that work, and they said that it just felt so much more harmonious, and they felt at peace with the land, and that was really lovely. And then another client who had a lot of sort of paranormal activity, so that a lot of kind of poltergeist sort of things moving about, a lot of activity like that going on. And
Mm.
um, and after I'd done that, they found it much more quiet, and there was quite a lot going on in their own life as well. So sometimes it can help you shift, because sometimes the energies in your home are kind of reacting to what is going on with you, a bit like how the dogs mirror us. Sometimes our homes mirror us as well.
In our cars.
Yes, our cars as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
so lots of different reasons. And actually I've also done a house healing for a couple of friends who are sort of artists, and it's actually inspired them to kind of like create art with their land as well. So it's quite different. Each person takes something different from it.
Yeah, definitely. I could see the interconnection with me. I grew up in this home and, it was so. But I sort of feel as though there must be some sort of divine timing between the cosmos, the astrology, when you get something done. Like when you did that reading, it set off a cascade of things that were already bubbling in me, that I felt were bubbling in me. They were just, and I think we've all been feeling like the energies have been off the charts, and sometimes you can feel so. I think it's like an in and an out breath. I sort of experience it like we get really compressed. You sort of breathe in, and it's like compressed, and then whatever needs to come out comes out. It's this constant sort of rhythmic movement. And if you don't breathe out, you'll eventually be forced to breathe out and you might explode. But but it's like, yeah, so to me it struck me that the timing of everything was so you couldn't have, like, as you said, if you sat down to plan something in an office like, ABC, you couldn't. But it was so meticulously designed, is the only way I can say, when and how you did it and how it showed up in me and in the house. Like, do you see that? That's
Yeah,
just
I do see that. And I think it's a bit like when I was training for the house healing, and my teacher said that it is kind of divinely orchestrated, even down to, because there's a lot of us house healers out there, but the people that are drawn to me will be drawn to me for a reason. So it's my way of doing it will be right for them, and there's other people that do it differently. So that's what I found fascinating when I was training, because we all had sort of like a different energy, so I do find that, and it just helps shift the energy. And like up until now everyone's been in a really positive way, so that's good.
Yeah. No, it is. And I think it takes a lot of pressure off a lot of things. It's like even me with the podcast, or like I wrote a book or I wrote two books, but even I remember someone saying to me, the people who need it will find it. Like, don't get overly stressed when you do things out of this. And there's a timing too. So, there's this pressure, or you do this, this is meant to happen, this is meant to happen. And I think we can take the pressure off a bit ourselves in that there is a timing. I don't know how you feel, Hilary, but the more I've opened myself up and detoxed, I think detoxing mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually is a big part of it, because we have been so whether it's just through our foods, through everything, through our thoughts, through our programming, the more it sort of happened organically. I'm just feeling it now. The more that's happening, the more in touch with my senses I am, and the more I sort of can connect with, oh, I'm feeling this really strong energy to just do whatever, send someone an email, and then about five things happen out of it, like ping, 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 ping. And then it's like it goes quiet, and I could force myself to go off and do something else, but the energy just isn't there, and I end up burnt out. But because we've been so programmed to be like 9 till 5 or 9 till 7 or whatever time at that, I think, yeah, we sort of override our rhythms, our natural
Yeah,
rhythms of doing things. What do
yeah,
you what
definitely.
do you think about that?
I do think I would love to um live more in the rhythms of nature, really, and I'm trying to be more like that. Well, I know there's a lovely lady that I met when I was on that retreat in Dartmoor, who told me that she was training to be like a menstruality teacher, so helping women live in accordance with their menstrual cycles. And this was fascinating to me, down to that she organized her work life so that she wasn't working on the days when she was bleeding, so that she could literally rest. And I mean, that's just so beautiful. And I did try and do it, but I wasn't entirely successful, because running your own business is so difficult. But why should it be so difficult? It must be just the way it's drummed into us
That's
to
it.
be
Even that
producing and
language.
doing. Yeah,
I know it's sort of the thought of saying that to someone, and they might be, what? You're not
but
working.
we would be able to be more productive, I think, because
Yeah.
we'd be more in connection with our rhythms. But um yeah, so and we can follow all the cycles with the moon, and with
Yeah.
nature. If we just tune back into that, I think that we wouldn't be as tired, we wouldn't be as ill. It's just it's just beautiful to try and tune in and take rest when we need it, or when it's naturally right to rest.
Yeah, it's trusting that, isn't it? It's
Mm.
that level of that was one of my biggest lessons from, and I don't know about you, but from having cancer at the time, was it was so, I just felt it so strongly very soon after, I'll only ever be given the next step in life. I just knew it, even though I fought it. Where no one is, yes, you can dream, and like you were, because you're following that sort of breadcrumb trail, let's say, because that's what you're feeling right now, rather than just going, that's what I'm going to do. But you're never really shown the outcome. It's just, and we've been so conditioned again to go 5-year plan, 10-year plan, and they're fine if they're broad enough to accommodate you shifting and changing as you go. But it's, I don't know, it's been challenging for me, but it's where the greatest gifts have come from, us when I've just stayed with what am I excited about now, and try and stay with that and not go off on another. Because there could be a timing to that I'm pushing before it's right. Have you found that like it's such it's a diff the reason I like to talk about it as well, I think, is we hear so much of the opposite. We can never hear enough of how we undo all of this, because this is how we reclaim our authentic voice. We have to start, not have to, but if we want to, that start understanding these natural, they're sort of laws of nature, aren't they? Really natural law, how we're designed to live and thrive.
Yeah, I think what you said about, yeah, if it excites you, then it doesn't feel hard or pressure, or, it doesn't feel like you're trying to get somewhere. It's just you can be more in the moment, I think, if it excites you. Because when I look back over the last few years and think, how many different courses I've done, if I'd set out at the beginning to say I'm going to do this many courses in these years, that would have seemed like quite a task. But by just literally being with each one and being so excited about each one, it's the time's just been irrelevant. I've just loved every minute of it, and it's just taken me where I needed to be. So it didn't feel like forcing or pushing anything. And I didn't even set out to be doing it as any kind of job. It was just something that interested me. So that made
Yes,
it,
okay.
you know,
You
I
hadn't
never
that sudden
thought,
pressure to
yeah, that took that
init-
pressure, yeah, of it.
So how did you come across fear at some point? You obviously had to get to a point where you said, okay, I'm going to make a business or a livelihood out of this and I'm going to leave. Did you leave the other, or are you still doing both? Or how are you
Yeah, I'm
managing?
still doing the dog grooming
Yeah.
now. Yes.
You've
So
left the law
I
behind.
left the law in, yeah,
Left the
2018.
law. I,
Yeah, so I started my dog grooming training in 2016. So just took me a couple of years. I think by the end of 2018, I think I left. I cut it down to like 4 days at law, and then three, and then two, and then I left. But I was running
mm,
them along at the same time. But
lovely
yeah,
way to be able to do it.
yeah, I wanted to go all in and just leave it, but my partner made me calm down and try and do, which was hard to do, but obviously we need money as well.
Yeah.
So you've got
Mm.
to try and balance that. But at the moment I couldn't think of giving up dog grooming because I still love it so much. So I've cut down my days a little bit so that I've got more time to devote to the botanical healing and the house healing. But I can't even see me giving up the dog grooming because I love it so much.
But
But
is the
I'll
dog
probably
grooming combined with the botanical healing then? Is it, or is it distinct in its own right that some
it's
people
separate,
just
but
come from?
I have
Yeah.
had some of my dog grooming clients come to me for botanical healing as well. So yeah.
Yeah. Have you a really particular, let's say, success story you'd like to share with a client and an animal of?
Well, I had a beautiful one recently with a lovely big Labradoodle who's 12 years old. I've known him since he was a puppy, a friend of mine, and he had an awful wound on his paw, but he wouldn't let anyone close to it to see what was going on. So the vet was saying, "Oh, it's either a tumor or some sort of bone infection. So we'll need to do a test, a scan or whatever." And they had to put him out for this because he wouldn't let them go near it. And so before he had that, I went and did a session with them. And he chose yarrow essential oil and sat with that for quite some time. And he was able to, so he'd been holding his paw up really uncomfortably, and he was able to literally relax that down and even like laid his head on his paw. And he selected a few others. And by the end of the session, after about an hour, he was literally laid on his side with his stomach out, asleep. He'd done loads of big yawns and sighs releasing and stuff. And so he got some ability to settle, which he hadn't for days because he'd been really in a lot of pain with this. And so once he'd one of the things he selected was valerian essential oil, which is a really lovely, relaxing, and a bit of a sedative as well. So after he came back from the vets, he was quite stressed because the vet obviously really always stresses him out. And they'd done the biopsy. And so the owner offered him valerian and he settled again. So that was like from doing the session before, we managed to identify which oil was a good one for helping him settle. And so kind of he moved through. So the yarrow was what he wanted initially, probably for the pain. And then the valerian was more for the relaxation. So he moved through a couple, I think neroli as well, he went through as well. So that was just something to sort of help manage that, because otherwise she would have had to put him on some quite strong painkillers and that sort of thing, which at 12 years old she didn't really want to do.
Mm.
And now she's just going forwards, taking that, now that she's learned how to offer them, she can manage him going forwards, because obviously he's an older boy and he's got lots of different issues. So I just thought that was a really nice one.
That's beautiful. And is it mainly through inhalation? Is that how the
Yeah.
animal or the dog will work with it? It's mainly inhalation. You
Mainly,
don't put it
yes.
on their skin or anything, do you?
Not
Or
very often, but
no.
sometimes you can, if it's diluted in an oil, you can rub
Yes,
some on your hands
Paranoid. Yeah.
and offer it and sort of say in your mind or out loud, would you like this applied anywhere on your body? And if you get a yes, or they come over, or they sometimes actually push a part of their body into your hands, so you can then massage it in to their body. Yeah, obviously depending on the oil, as long as it's not a dermal irritant or anything. But
Yes.
oils like wintergreen, which are really good for arthritis and things like that, they sometimes want that applied because that goes in really beautifully, like a deep heat or something.
Beautiful. It just strikes me when you're talking that without the sort of psychological mind that we have, we'd be a lot better off sometimes. I remember a really lovely friend who works with plant spirit medicine, basically. Again, she worked with the spirit of plants, and she said like we're animals at our core, I suppose, as a species, but we were given a mind because we're not out in, like, we weren't given claws and fangs because we're not out in the wild trying to survive. We were given a mind to survive in the world, but it was only really to sort of make decisions, yes or no, and navigate it. But it's taken on a whole life of its own and become like a prison nearly for many of us. So what you described there with the dog and the oil, so simply, we have to go off and train and learn and undo in order to reconnect with that, which you knew as a child. We all know as a child. You know what I mean? It sounds so mad when you describe the dog just knows and goes, yeah, I feel this, so I trust it. We're no, no,
Yeah,
I need the science, I need this, I don't trust that, maybe I'm wrong.
yeah.
You know?
Like,
Oh my
it's so
God.
beautiful to see them working
Yeah.
with the oils and see how they, respond to them, and just think, wow,
A great teacher
they're
to
like
us.
teachers. Yeah.
Yeah. So the owners, I imagine, are they sort of wow, like, when they see it must impact them and then their understanding of working with oils or plants or nature. Do you see that
Yeah,
as well?
definitely. Yeah, because they'll be a bit sort of, oh well, they'll just, so like with the herbs, I normally put some herbs out on a mat. So some spirulina, barley grass, and devil's claw root, which is good for arthritis, and different herbs, calendula, things like that, and let them sort of go around and choose which ones they want to. They might want to roll in them or chew them or sniff them. And the owner might say, oh, well, they'll eat anything. They'll just eat the lot. But it's not food. It's more along the lines of a medicine. So they're not in that mindset. They're not feeling greedy or hungry, like,
Mm.
so then they're surprised because they'll more or less ignore half of them probably and just go for one, and then go and lie down, and then they might come back and go to one of the ones they ignored and take a bit of that. And the way they work with it makes the owner go, oh, actually, it's like they've really got a process here. They really understand what these plants are doing for them. They're not just eating them out of, that tastes nice.
Yeah.
And it's the
Yeah.
same with the oils, where they work with them. They choose. They're very kind of distinct about which ones they need and which ones they don't need. So it's very interesting for the owners as well, I think.
Yeah, that's a whole process. Do you ascribe to this idea that sometimes if you don't like, if you're sort of a bit repelled by the smell or the scent, that it has something to offer you, or it's just your body saying, I don't need it? Or how would you view that if it's a bit,
Yeah, I think that's an interesting one because I would have thought that it meant you didn't need it, but I actually had my experience with neroli essential oil was a bit like that. It almost brought up quite negative feelings, like a bit of panic and a bit of grief. It just and I mentioned to my teacher about it, and she said, if you can just sit with it, and just see what comes up for you. So, although I found it difficult, I would go back and just spend short amounts of time with it. And I ended up writing and journaling, and it turned out it really did shift something in me. It was kind of like a lot of grief coming up to the surface. You know how you've got layers. I mean, we've all got different grief over different things that have happened. And you may think you've got over that or whatever, but this sitting with neroli really brought something up, and now I can sit with neroli and I don't feel repelled by it. But it made me realize that sometimes if you can manage to sit with it, then it will help you move through something.
that's very interesting. Yeah, I get the sense, Hilary, when you're talking that, yeah, it could be, as you said, the layers. And obviously, if I wouldn't say the shadow, but something that maybe has been buried that we don't want to go there. So there's a part of us consciously maybe is going, oh, I can't go, or unconsciously, I can't go there. But actually, it's like, being rattled in your life or something going wrong. It has some good to offer, I suppose. So there's that. That's, yeah, my feeling on it, that you'll know there'll be an energy around it, like you said, almost panic. Like if there was just, no, it's nothing in that for me, but it drew a reaction from you, I suppose. That's it. There's some sort of energetic or emotional response. Well, then there likely is something there
Yes.
for us. It feels.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think so. And it's just useful to just tune in to your body and feel where you're feeling it, and just try and find out if there is some kind of communication going on between you, your body, and the plant.
Getting to know ourselves a bit better. I suppose this is part of the journey, isn't it? Becoming more, we're not sort of conditioned that way. But before we wrap up, I think it's nice to finish on as well often, because we start at the beginning, sort of talking a little bit about magic and you being a witch in the most beautiful, empowering, wonderful way, which I think we all are if we choose to look at it that way. What and I just feel that's really struck me just before coming on with you, was just that we're reclaiming and taking back this word and these gifts that we have and this magic that is our birthright. And you're just doing it so naturally. So, how would you like to see, if you were to look ahead a few years, what would you be most excited about or would like to see in terms of your own life in the world? If you were to bring your imagination into it as you did before, how will you be dressed?
Uh,
I know,
Probably in my
take it
long,
broadly.
yeah. Well, I have my cat on my lap like now, and I'll probably have the long flowing robes, like. But no, I would just like, I get really excited when I see younger women getting interested in, you know, working with their own cycles, working with the cycles of nature, um, not being driven by um someone else's agenda, just and putting rest and one's own health, quite at the top of the agenda, really. But I know that things are really hard at the moment, and but I think that we dream the reality that comes to us. And I watch a lot of Pam Gregory. We talked about her.
I
You
know.
know,
I think it's
we're
hard to
building,
find someone, well, if you're in the same sort of world.
yeah, we're building the world, the new world. And I'd love to see it based more on, collaboration instead of competition and, living in the cycles of nature. And yeah, I'd love to see that. And I just love to see people being more creative. And I'd love to see astrology taught in schools so that people can get to connect to their essence at a younger age.
I think it probably was. Someone else I interviewed was talking about that, and I think they were talking about geometry and it being sort of they were just talking about the key sort of subjects like geometry, maths, and how they're all interconnected in astrology and music. Like they're sort of the core sort of what's the word? I wouldn't say gifts, but they're sort of help us understand how the world, I suppose, operates or how we operate and our gifts. So I'm with you there. I sort of feel that too. I often get an image of being in um I sort of, and I'll just say, because I feel that as well, we're designed to live in much smaller sort of tribes or groups. I don't think that's, I think a lot of people feel that way as well. That even not that long ago, we did lived in, and then everybody, as you said, can you repeat that beautiful saying that the few words in that poem that you said about bringing your gift, is it to the
Yeah.
village? I think it's a lovely way just to finish. It's so lovely.
Yeah, it was saying, what is the gift you carry in your soul? What have you brought with you into the heart of the village?
Beautiful. I think we might leave it there. Hilary,
Yes.
if people want to get in touch with you well, you're obviously offering house and land healings as well remotely. You're doing your dog grooming, I doubt remotely, I presume in person. Um, you're not yet offering astrology readings, but I'm sure you will be. Yeah.
Very early in my
I
study of that.
know, me too. But we got to dream it into existence. So yeah, if people want to find out more about what you're offering, where should they go?
Yeah, so I've got a website, hilarysholistic.co.uk, and I've got my Substack under, I think it's Hilary Keeping, and I'm on Instagram, Hilary's Holistic and Hilary Keeping as well.
Perfect. Yes, I found both. So I'll add them all in the description box. So for anyone, if you're listening and would like to connect with Hilary, do follow her up. Substack is beautiful. I think Substack is a really beautiful space in a way, isn't it? It's sort of relatively new to me. I keep saying I feel like I opened a door into a room and I'm still not sure what's in here yet. I'm just sort of, I don't know what's going on, but I'm here.
It just feels like a more creative space than
It
the others.
does.
Yeah.
And very organic. I think what's really nice, where I've found people come is, and it's very collaborative because people recommend each other. I didn't even know this. So if I enjoyed something that you've written, I can add that to my recommend list. And then if people like, so it's sort of like-minded people connecting. It's lovely and organic. There's no competition or anything like that. It's just people expressing themselves creatively. It's a really
Yeah.
nice energy. And it's, yeah. So, anyways, I won't do an ad for Substack here, but Hilary is on Substack. So, thank you. Thank you so much for your time today and all your wisdom, and just wishing you so much magic in the future.
Thank you. Thank you, Celine.
And thank you, everyone, for listening. And until the next time, take care.